Welcome. We are with more than 200 people today, which is insane. Thank you for joining. And the other great news is that we've been awarded the #1 Great Place to Work in Belgium. So Dean and I are really excited to share our best practices with you today. So this webinar is going to be different from other webinars you've heard. Let's start with what we all know. If you want your business or if you want to be successful as a manager, you need to work with Gen Z. The challenge is that for most people, they don't know how to work with Gen Z. They don't know how to manage them. They are unclear on how to give feedback, unsure on how to motivate them, and completely overwhelmed by all the different management techniques out there. So today, with Dean, we have the opportunity to open a conversation about Gen Z. We noticed there are 4 big mistakes that managers do with Gen Z. So we are going to deep dive into those mistakes so that you can not only manage, but inspire Gen Z to work for you. This webinar conversation is interactive. So please use the chat if you have questions. If you agree, disagree, and please do so in your own language. By the way, I'm Alicia Thomas. I've been working with millennials and Gen Z for the past 10 years. I'm a coach and expert in talent development. I also work for Ormit Talent. We've hired and trained over 2,000 talents in the past years. And just last year, we connected 100 talents, we're under one at Engie, with companies. So companies who are also struggling to attract and retain Gen Z now became talent magnets. Ormit Talent is the only company in Belgium that attract, develop, and connect Gen Z. Enough about me. Dean, you're sitting next to me. Yep. I know we always have very inspiring conversations about how you manage your people. You grew from a team of 3 people to 10 people in a minimum amount of time. So can you please tell us who you are and why you are here today?
So thanks for inviting me, Alicia, to discuss this very interesting topic. So I'm Dean Vanraemdonck. I'm a business manager at Engie. I've been working for Engie for 10 years now. I'm responsible for a team of project developers. So we're active in renewable energy, most of the time developing solar installations for B2B customers.
Okay, thank you very much. And then we also have Eva. You cannot see her, but Eva is the timekeeper today. She will make sure that we stick to the timing, and she will also manage the questions. To make sure we respect the timing, we will also handle the questions at the end of this webinar. Also, make sure to stick until the end, because we have an exclusive giveaway that we will disclose. Yeah? Yes, we know now who Dean is, who I am, who Eva is, but we want to know who you are. So are you born in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, maybe millies, maybe 50s? So drop it in the chat. Tell us in which year you're born. I'm watching Eva. I'm very curious if she gets the numbers.
Yes, the polls are coming in. We mostly have people from the 90s and the 80s, also a couple of from the nillies, but I guess the millennials are most represented here today, although I also see quite some people from the 60s and the 70s. So very diverse group that is represented here, and polls keep coming in. So yeah, we're diverse people listening in.
Awesome, thank you. This wouldn't be a webinar about Gen Z if we wouldn't show a Gen Zer in action. So we ask one of our talents, Ormit, to make a short clip on Gen Z and their relation to work.
I'm Gen Z. Of course I will not pick up the phone when you call me. Can't hear ya. I'm Gen Z. Of course I will decline your 8 a.m. meeting. I'm journaling and meditating. I'm Gen Z. Of course you think I'm lazy. I just know when I'm most productive. At home.
I'm Gen Z. Of course I will leave the office at 5 p.m. It's called boundaries.
The fact that I'm leaving doesn't mean that I don't care about my job. It means that I have a lot of other things going on aside from my job.
Okay. I'm going to start this webinar in an unconventional way. I would actually like to start with a story that might resonate with you. So in September, I had 2 men down in my marketing team, and September is like the most busiest month for us. It's really campaign season. So I could really use some help. And heaven sent me the Gen Zer. So I was really thrilled, really happy to start working with him. He arrives at work and I see a piercing, I see nail polish, I see very obvious sneakers, a very cool outfit, but maybe not like the outfit I would have chosen for working in a company. So the first thing that popped into my mind was, will I have to deal with giving feedback to him? Do I really need to have a conversation about nail polish at work and when it's okay and not okay? And actually, I have to say, this is one of the most committed team member I've had. After 1 week, he was already working with 2 different AI tools for copywriting. He knew our CRM system better than I did, and he was really helping the team to adopt also new hacks. And even like process mapping, he was adding emojis, memes, a lot of color. So he really added a new vibe within the team and moved us forward at a pace I hadn't expected. And the reason why I'm telling this story, I believe a lot of managers or people in leadership positions fall into the same trap. We have our beliefs on how we should be dressed, at what time we should come at work, but that doesn't resonate with Gen Z. And if we aren't capable to embrace diversity and let them have a seat at the table, this is really a risk for the future businesses and future managers. So today I'm so happy that we can have this discussion. I'm also curious if you also have like those fixed ideas about work and if it clashes with Gen Z. Really have an impact on Gen Z management. To become a manager, Gen Z wants to work for. Okay, so I think you're all curious about those mistakes. Dean, let's go to mistake number 1.
Great.
Okay, so mistake number 1, it's an easy one to understand, but it's not an easy one to fix. And the first biggest mistake is when you hire the wrong Gen Z. It's a very costly mistake, and it's also a mistake that has a lot of consequences. If you have the wrong element in your team, that will create a disengagement or a toxicity in your team towards the other team members. So, Dean, I was curious for you, what's a good talent? How do you know when you hire someone that that's the good people for your team?
Yeah. For my team, so the fact that we have business developers working on industrial projects, they are often in discussion with CEOs of companies, CFOs. So when I select people to work in the team, I mainly focus on proactivity and the maturity of the people.
Okay. Proactivity, okay, I understand that, but then we can have a perfect conversation in an interview about how proactive they are. We would recommend you need to see the skill in action. How do you know if someone is really proactive?
Yeah, what we do in the job interview is we have a small test that we ask the people to perform. And actually, it's an exercise at a board or a desk.
Mm-hmm.
So we see also how do they take the pen? Do they stand up? Are they assertive enough? Do they provide enough feedback? Do they hesitate or not? What is their posture when standing up? How do they communicate? So it's a very simple exercise, I would say, but it gives us a lot of information on how they would interact in what is already kind of a stressed situation, a job interview, but also the fact that we ask something on which they were not prepared.
Okay.
But I think for me personally, also when stepping into a job interview, I try not to look too much to the resume or the CV, but more look into the soft skills on how people interact. And I think you also at Ormit have a way to challenge this.
Indeed, we really put them to test. So the first thing I would recommend to do is to define the 3 to 5 maximum skills that you really need. Like, what are the critical skills for your team? And then think of how can I see this skill in action. That's the second step. And then the third one, put the candidate into the action. So we actually work with professional actors. So for us, the 3 skills are learning agility, adaptability, and emotional intelligence. So they have to do a role play, which is quite stressful with the actors. Then we give them feedback, and they don't know the next step. Then we say, okay, great, you did the role play. You can do it all over again, but we want to see you integrate the feedback. So this allows us to see very quickly the resilience, the agility, the learning capacity. And for us, it's a way to really set the best performers from the other ones. Okay, I'm thinking. So indeed, wrong hires are really painful for your team, for you as a manager, and it's costly for the company. So tip number 1, select your candidates by testing them in real life on the skills that are critical for your team.
Yep.
Moving on to mistake number 2. Okay, great. Mistake number 2, silencing the frustration. So we also noticed we ask managers about their frustration with Gen Z, and we got a lot of response. And we see that salary is really a hot topic and something that generates a lot of frustration. Also the fact that they are very eager to move quickly in their career. We call it, they want too much too soon. Do you recognize this, Dean?
Yes, I see the frustration often also with managers because they don't know how to cope with it, but also the frustration with Gen Z or the employees themselves.
Okay. And how do you handle it? How do you do it?
Yeah, for me, what I see is, or the pitfall is not to address these topics or the frustration.
Okay.
Because for me, if you can't address it, there will be a day that they just say, okay, I'm gone.
Yeah.
And you can't anticipate you will have an important member leaving the company or the team. So for me, it's important to have open discussions with the employees, be transparent on also what we need from them,
Okay.
but also what they need. It doesn't mean that we can give everything they want, but it's important to understand and to go in discussion and also to explain what is possible and what is not possible. Because I think that's really something to be heard is important, and also to be able to capture this information and to see what you can do as a manager to help them out.
Yeah, but I also hear, and I think that's a misconception that managers tend to do. They think listening or not silencing the frustration doesn't mean you just have to give in. You don't have to just accept and do it, because otherwise you're stuck in another dynamic, and that's not something we want. So I think, listening, but then also how can you play on those elements? And we will discuss later the 4 other elements you can play next to salary, for example. I know there is a very hot topic for the moment, a buzzword, psychological safety. That's something you talk a lot.
Yeah, for me, indeed, if you can create psychological safety, it can really help the team and also the manager to understand what are the needs and to make everything talkable or be able to go in discussion. And I've seen some interesting experiences on that one.
Okay.
By being able to address these topics, I see it can really help in preventing burnouts, for example, or people who are too engaged if they don't openly communicate about it. Because typically we know what is going on with extrovert people, but the introverts, so it's also about assessing what you see as a manager. So people say they do like this with their head, but actually they're saying yes. So I say, okay, but I see your body language is saying you don't agree, or you tell me everything is going well, but I see that this is not the case. And then, okay, you can go into the discussion. And of course, psychological safety is not something which comes naturally or directly. And for me, I try to embark them at the first day at the office to also say, okay, I'm available in case of problems or issues. I also try to put forward examples from personal failures, so to show vulnerability, because I don't have the answer on all the topics. And I think being open and transparent on this provides a relation of trust and care. And this is, I think, for me, important if you want to go to psychological safety, because for me, there are a lot of advantages that are maybe not directly visible for the company.
Do you think of one thing that psychological safety brought you or brought your team members?
Yeah, I think I have an example 2 years ago of somebody in the team who was a Gen Z. So he did a traineeship in the company. And the last mission was in my team for 6 months. And then he worked, I think, 5 months in the team. And then he said he wanted to move abroad, which is, I would say, quite fast. So he addressed it with me. And we looked together to see, okay, are there opportunities within the Engie group? And now he's working in Australia, in Sydney.
Nice.
And it gave me the opportunity because we assessed it the first time around June, and he left in February. So I had a lot of time to prepare the team to cope with his leave, and he already had the time, an overlap with the person who was following up. So it's really interesting to pass through the different files. And even recently, I have a new team member joining the team, and he told me he chose to join the team because of the relation with the manager, of the feedback he got from the one who left to Australia 2 years ago. So this is not the reason why I do it, but I see that there are a lot of advantages which are not obvious at the moment that you do it.
I think it may seem like an investment, but I would say the key here is when you see a frustration, it might frustrate you as well, but start by listening, dare to dig deeper, dare to explore the topic. Again, we don't say that you have to give in, but there are other elements you can play with. And I'm going to make a bridge with a second mistake. If you have the right people, they should then have also the mindset to be able to have those conversations with you. So that's why mistake number one, hire the right people. And then secondly, don't silence the frustration is really key to manage Gen Z effectively. Okay, we move over to mistake number 3. Stuck in the norm. We've always done it that way. That's the way it works around here. Yes, good idea, but that's not going to work here. Actually, to explain maybe this mistake, we will start with a question from the audience. And I'm going to put you in the seat. I'm curious, how would you answer this question? Because it's not an easy one.
For the people listening in that don't have a screen, I'll read the question. So, how to integrate Gen Z correctly in your way of work? For example, we work with office hours because our agencies has to be open from 8:30 till 5:30. However, Gen Z wants flexible hours and at least the possibility to work from home. How do you deal with this?
So I think it's a very, very interesting question. I don't think it's an easy one. I would say the first question I ask if I get an uncommon request is also why is it this way? Why are we forced to work in specific hours? And is it really, really necessary? Yes or no? And I can imagine, for example, if you go to the hospital or maybe at desk jobs and so on, that there is no alternative. And I think in that case, it's important to engage and also explain why this is asked. But in general, if I think it's quite a hot topic for the moment, because a lot of companies are making programs back to the office and things like that to get people more engaged into the offices. I think you should be able to create an environment where there is a possibility to have a lot of interaction between the people and where the people would really like to be. So it's more interesting to work than at home. It doesn't mean that you have to do it every day, but I think there also the employers have a role to play in making it attractive enough to
come back to work.
To come back to the office, for example.
Yes, I think the flexibility is a very important one for Gen Z. So I think in general, if you're working with Gen Z, there are 5 elements you can play with or you can negotiate with. So if you cannot play on flexibility, which is really high on the list of Gen Z, you can still play on culture, like having really the coolest team, the coolest environment, a good manager. Like you said, you had one team member choosing because they heard you were a good manager. Development opportunities. Yes, you have to come 9 to 5. We understand it's really frustrating for you, but we will invest in your career and bring you there. That's another way to do it. And then finally, we have the salary. But the salary, I think it's a tricky one because we see it only motivates people for 4 to 6 months. It's really an extrinsic motivator, and then it disappears. And you're there with the frustration or the problem again. So, yeah, when we see Eva, maybe you want to jump in? Eva is writing notes, but...
Yes. Yeah, something else that we discussed before was that what do you do if... So sometimes the companies can change and they can innovate. So which people do you need and which tips do you have there for organizations on how to attract which type of people to innovate?
Yeah, I think there indeed... to have a performing team, I think everybody would agree that we need a lot of diversity in the team, which means gender diversity, but also ethnic backgrounds, but also different kind of age groups. So I think that's really important to have a performing team. And there also, when I hire someone, going back to the first topic, some hires are, I would say, very easy because they are within the bias you have on the people you would need. But for me, it's also, I try to ask myself the question, is it a decision I make because it's in my comfort zone, or is it for me more difficult to do it? And I try to step out of the comfort zone because for me, it's interesting to have other point of view on things and just to change what was already there for a few years, for example. And I think this can really be a facilitator on the 5 topics you mentioned.
Certainly. Maybe another example I have from Ormit, which stuck in the norm. That's again the salary topic, which is really a burning one. So I know there is a lot of frustration because, and I was thinking also like that, you have to prove yourself and then you will get the salary you deserve. But Gen Z sometimes sees it differently. And for example, at Ormit, we don't pay like the highest salaries on the market. But we really play with the fact that we are going to give them a business coach. They are going to get a lot of trainings. It's a very nice environment. And those elements can compensate the fact that we don't have the highest salary. And it also helps in terms of diversity and having different kind of people.
Yeah, I really see that there are a lot of interest in their personal development, I would say, in general. And it can be on the job, creating new experiences, can be from the culture and discussion with colleagues. It can be specific trainings on what they need. And for me also, what I try to do is with each of them look into an individual development plan to see where they want to go in a few years. And if they have wishes, for example, to go abroad or have new missions internally, I fully support them. And also to see, what are all the steps that you need to make to be able to even be more performing in the role that you are. I see typically is that you wait 3 or 5 years before this is started, but I try to integrate it already in the embarking process.
Yeah.
Because I also feel for them it's really important. And one of the last people I hired, for example, he asked me during the job interview, I would really like to meet the team before I give a commitment to come to work with you.
Okay.
So we set up like a coffee call with, and I arranged that a lot of the team members were at the office. And it was like really interesting to see that for him it was really important to also understand, it's what you mentioned, the culture, with who will I be working?
Yes.
Is there enough experience? How do they interact with each other? Is the vibe good? But for me, it was like the first time that I did it. Like, okay, out of the comfort zone, something new, something that they ask. And it's not difficult to arrange it. So
I'm so happy you did it because, we are going to go to the last mistake, but that really hangs on to what you say. You could just say, no, it's new, it's maybe weird. You can have an opinion on that because, again, we are stuck in our norm on how we recruit people. And that's maybe not part of the process. So that's a very interesting one. Okay, so let's move over to the last mistake, leading out of fear. So we human beings, we don't like discomfort. We love harmony, we love safety, we love our little comfort zone. And we certainly, managers, don't like to do mistakes. That's something we want to prevent at all costs. But I don't know if you're always conscious of the impact it has on your team, on your people, when you don't dare to make a choice out of fear, out of mistake. There is a very famous quote, I hire people to tell me what to do. It's from Steve Jobs, but this could have been your quote. I think that's your philosophy. What do you think of this leading out of fear? Does it resonate with you?
Yeah, but I think generally I would say people are more afraid of one mistake, and people are often penalized a lot more for one mistake than for 10 successes. And this is, I think, typically also for big organizations, they're really focused on not making mistakes. And we also do everything to prevent these mistakes a lot as possible. But we're also in a world which is VUCA, volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. So we need to really adapt. We need to do things which are really new. And that's why we need the diversity. We need the Gen Z along with us. A lot of topics on AI. So we try to do new things. We try to innovate things. And therefore, it's logic that we will make mistakes. And for me, in the embarkment process, one of the things I tell them, I rather have, if I'm not available, for example, that they discuss with the team members and that there is a decision which is made. Because for me, don't making a decision is also a decision. Or going with the status quo, is also a decision. But it's, I would say, mentally more difficult to go for a new direction than staying with the same, but actually staying with the same is also a choice. So it doesn't mean that we do things unorganized or really out of the blue, but okay, the people we hire are enough maturity or intelligent enough to make balanced decisions. So I encourage them to make a decision if nobody is available, but actually in reality it doesn't ever happen. It would be if I am at the hospital, if everybody would be sick or something like that. But just the fact I think that we address it makes them, we give them the responsibility, and we try to empower them on this way.
I think again, if you have the right people on your team, if you created a space where you can have those conversations about making mistakes, like the psychological safety, that will also give you some control in the mistakes they will do.
Yeah, and for me, maybe an example of somebody in the team which already was a lot more senior, which made a mistake with a subsidy file, which cost us quite a bit of money. But I recently found out that he also was discussing it with other team members, and he mentioned that the way we coped with this error
Mistake, yeah.
for him was completely new. So we tried to fix it, and but no, I think it's important to not judge people on the mistake, because nobody does a mistake by purpose.
Mm.
And I see actually since then he's even more engaged than before, because the way they react, the management react on a quite human way, it's for him something completely new, and now he's engaged 200% because he wants to make good for the failure that he or the mistake that he has done in the past.
We have another question from the audience.
Yeah.
How to delegate tasks or responsibilities without feeling it that it's overwhelming?
Yeah, I try to, and again, I discuss a lot with the people in my team. But before I give them a task, I try to pulse. I don't know if it's a correct English word.
Assess.
Assess. I try to see. What would they be comfortable being assigned with this task or this responsibility? And I also try to understand what are the reasons why they wouldn't. And then discuss it with them. Often they say, "I know it's interesting." They also see the potential on what they can learn from the task or the mission. We go in discussion. They mention, "Okay, I'm not comfortable discussing this with this person, for example, or I need more coaching on that." And then we try to support, and the support can be from myself as a manager, but also from team members. It can be just a training, something else. And the fact that I first discuss the topic that I'm thinking about it, and leaves them also the time to reflect on it, and I think they start visualizing themselves doing the task. And then, after a few days or after a week, we sit together and say, "Are you comfortable? Yes or no?" And if they say yes, I'll fully support. If they say no, I'll try to find another solution. And this is typically for me something. The role of a manager is also to cope with no's and to see how can we deal with it. Because often people say, "Okay, but I want to do it because I don't want to disappoint you, but actually I'm not comfortable," or okay, but then we'll find another solution, or we'll try to reframe the task or something like that. So I think that would be my answer to the question.
Okay. Because indeed you're in an industry where mistakes have big consequences. So I think it's a tricky balance. Gen Z needs to make mistakes to learn. So we really need to let them make mistakes. But where do you draw the line? Where do you know this is acceptable or not?
Yeah, I would say that there are, of course, topics which are like safety, ethics, and so on.
Non-negotiables.
Non-negotiables. But if they do it with good intentions, for me, it's the most important.
Okay. So we tackled the 4 big mistakes. Now we will move over to a Paul. I'm very curious to hear which mistake resonates with you. If you look at yourself as a manager, which mistake do you do the most often? So you can press 1, 2, 3, or 4 in the chat box. Can people on Vimeo also see it? Yeah, Eva will get the mic.
Yes, so for the people on Vimeo, so type 1 if it's hiring the wrong talent, type 2 if it's silencing the frustration, 3 when it's being stuck in the norm, and type 4 when it's leading out of fear. So which of the 4 big mistakes are the most difficult for you?
Okay.
I see the poll coming in. So being stuck in the norm is in a race with silencing the frustration.
Okay.
Head to head.
Stuck in the norm is really the most natural one, I think, for a lot of people.
Yeah, well, silencing the frustration gets more and more votes. So there we see that it's a difficult one. For us, this is also interesting information to know what else we can share practical tips for in the future.
I think we could do just an entire webinar on silencing the frustration. It's certainly a hot topic.
Exactly.
I know, Eva, we also have a delay of 10 seconds.
Yes.
Do you want to move to the...
Well, we will move to the Q&A in a minute. So I already have a couple of questions in the chat. We will discuss them in a moment. However, there's a delay of 10 seconds between what we see coming in and when you hear it. So now let's see again our actress Romé with a video that can overcome the delay of 10 seconds. In the meantime, put all your questions in the chat and we'll see if we can answer them before the end of the webinar.
Yes, and stick until the end because we'll also talk about the exclusive offer.
Yes, exclusive getaway is coming up. All right. Question regarding the salary package. Although Gen Z is really committed with sustainable development, for a lot of them, a company car is more important. What do you do if it's not possible for the function they're applying for? How do you deal with it? So what if they want a car, but actually their function doesn't allow for it?
Yes, so that's actually a very good and relevant question. I think I will use the words of Dean. First, try to understand why it's so important. Is it just because their friends have it, or do they really have a problem to come to work? Because then that problem is also your problem. So as a manager, I would recommend you then to find a solution together. Then again, don't forget there are other elements you can play with. So there will be frustration because probably the answer will be, no, sorry, no car for you. But then again, if you understand the why, is there something else you can do? Like playing on culture, playing on development, on future career moves, or maybe just nice team activities if that person is like super extrovert and that's really important for them. I don't know how you see it.
Yeah, but maybe another example, but not really related to the car. But I have a friend, and he was going also abroad a lot for work. And typically they had a budget of X euro a night for the hotel and so on. And what he discussed with his manager was, okay, I want to stay a little bit longer. And he slept in a hostel, which was like a fifth of the price. But with the budget, yeah, you could stay a little bit longer and make it into a weekend and couple it with some
Other
activities and a city trip and so on. So this is for me an example of there is a budget for it. Yeah, it's not an issue to use the budget fully, but also be flexible in what we can give. And for him, it was really interesting to have these kind of experiences.
Certainly, I think HR with the future generation should learn to adapt, and that goes for the salary, that goes for the mobility package, cafeteria plan. But try to build in some flexibility.
Yeah. Thank you. Another question coming in. If I misinterpret the question, Dan, let me know. So the question is, well, the mistakes that are brought forward, the 4 biggest mistakes, how does it differ from other generations coming up in the market? Wanting too soon too much and encountering, we've always done it like that. Isn't it something all generations encounter? Why is it then so different with Gen Z growing up in a more internet apps, social media heavy environment?
I'm so happy that this question is coming. I was expecting this question. So no, there are a lot of similarities with other generations. Millennials were also challenging, frustrating, pushing our buttons, and Gen X was probably doing the same. And I would also advise to look back in the time when you started working, how was your behavior versus today? However, we see that there are some differences with Gen Z or some elements that are really only applicable for Gen Z. And I think the main ones are the way they are looking at finances, but then I would blame Gen X, the parents, how they raised Gen Z, and we see that Gen Z was raised in a way, how do you see this spending? How would you handle this budget? So they are really open. They also have a lot more job opportunities. I know I was really in the crisis, in the bank crisis, when I was looking for a job. So if I had a job, I was lucky, and that's it. And then I think technology, because sometimes I hear a lot of frustration about, yeah, but Gen Z and the mental health, and they are not resilient. Okay, but we used to compare ourselves to maybe a classmate, but now Gen Z compares themselves on TikTok with a global online community. So they really have more triggers and more pressure.
Yeah, what I see, typically management and higher management is 45 or 50 plus. And the fact that everything is going faster and faster, the gap between these managers and the entry-level employees becomes bigger and bigger with time. And I become manager at 28, and I see also these kind of topics where they say, but we've been a manager for 20 years, we know how it's done, this is the way, we already talk enough about psychological safety, but then in the end you see that they are coping with people disconnecting from the team, toxic teams, or burnouts and so on.
Yeah. There is a direct correlation between the age of the manager and the satisfaction of Gen Z. And we see how bigger this gap is, how bigger the dissatisfaction is with Gen Z, and actually also the manager. It's on both ends.
Another interesting question here, and keep them coming. So a lot of elements of how the employer can adapt, understand, support Gen Z have been shared, but how do we find the right balance between the own company culture and the expectations of Gen Z? How to avoid too much pleasing and pampering? Yeah,
I think for me it's important also to have a balanced team. I would say you can't have one person earning a lot more or having a lot more flexibility than others. So I think you have to find the right balance within the team. For me also, if we go again to the VUCA world, and a lot of Gen Z are also very attracted to startups, which is not really, it's another kind of mindset than for big companies. And I think the challenge of big companies is also how can we attract these people, because we need those people to be able to align with society and to be able to move faster, quicker, to implement innovation and so on. So I think for big companies, they're also looking at how can we adapt ourselves to be more like startups with more freedom, more flexibility, but a lot more opportunities. And I think this is really something that can attract Gen Z.
Yeah, and I would maybe just want to add, don't pamper them. Please don't. You will create a dynamic you will be stuck in. So when we were like silencing the frustration, why do you think you deserve a car? Why do you think you deserve a raise? Why do you think, like, make them accountable? If they're coming with their wish list, okay, but tell me why. and then we will work together on that.
Yeah, and indeed, I think also as a manager, with regard to the credibility you have, it's important to say no at some times, but it's important to give context why it is. And I think, especially for Gen Z, it's important to give this context, interact with them, explain why, but also, what would be needed to have this kind of next move or next raise or something like that.
All right. Looking at the time, we have, I think, a couple of more questions, also from questions that were brought to us before the webinar. But for the people that need to leave at 11:50 sharp, let's go to the exclusive giveaway. Alicia?
Yes, indeed. So one way to inspire Gen Z and not only manage Gen Z is to walk the talk as a manager. And I think we should all agree that managers should develop too. So that's why we want to offer today an exclusive workshop, the Lego Serious Play workshop. So I think that's something your team would love. It's a playful way to handle very serious topics. So you can work on your strategy, you can work on your project management skills while literally building Legos. So this is a 2-hour workshop that we give away today. if you want to win this workshop, just enter Lego in the chat. And if you want to double your chance to win this workshop, reshare this LinkedIn post and share your biggest mistake. What is your biggest mistake? And let it know to the world and to all the Gen Zers out there that are looking for an inspiring manager.
Great, fantastic. I just shared the link in the chat of the live storm. I will share it because with all the Legos, otherwise it will be underneath a lot of Lego. So comment Lego or post on LinkedIn, and we will share who won the workshop on Friday. Great. So for the people that want to stay for the other questions, please do. So another question we have here from Klaartje. Thank you, Klaartje. A very sensitive topic regarding money in our society is that you don't talk about your wage with your colleagues or even friends and family. But Gen Z challenges that norm. Mm-hmm. How can you respond to this? Because for a company, it's not always easy if all of a sudden Gen Z starts to share everything with everyone.
So this is a perfect example of leading out of fear and stuck in our norm. So in our norm, we don't speak about money. I just don't do it. But that's not how Gen Z does it. And you have Glassdoor and probably a bunch of other tools that will openly say how much you can earn there, or even TikTok, and then it's just out there. And then leading out of fear, ask yourself the question, why do you think it's a tricky one? Is it maybe because actually you know the salaries are not transparent or not maybe equal? So I would really recommend you to ask yourself why, because this is not about Gen Z. This is about future way of working, future HR. And this is something that you will have to apply one day. And if you want to be competitive, I would start as soon as possible with that. And then, if it's the case that you are not transparent, that maybe the salaries are not being paid equally, I would suggest to come up with a project and maybe involve Gen Z at the table to review the way salaries are given. I don't know how you see this or how it is.
No, indeed, I mentioned it earlier. For me, the balance is important within the team. And also, you can proactively, you don't have to wait till people say, I need a raise or I want this. Try to discuss it proactively to understand what are the needs. But indeed, is the question, why would it be a topic? Because there is probably inequality or it's not balanced within the team. And I think this is something, and I see typically what you have as a culture, you have a wage, and every year they get an increase of X% and X%. But if you start very low, you will stay always low compared to other ones. So I think as a manager, you should ask yourself, is the rewarding in line with the responsibilities? Because the responsibilities can change also within time. And maybe, you have to rebalance this within your team at a certain moment.
Or again, compensate in the meanwhile with maybe a training or a development opportunity. And just be transparent on the fact, I agree, you don't earn enough, but we can do this and this in the meanwhile.
Mm-hmm. All right, interesting. Another question from Claudia. So she loves to give a lot of responsibility to the people in her team, listen to their frustrations. But when she tells them to come up with a solution, she feels that nothing happens. And it's not in her values to really have to impose things. So what's the right balance there?
Okay. Name it. I notice that this is the third meeting we have around this project and that I'm the only one coming with ideas. How come? So I would really just put it there.
Yeah, and it's easier for an employee if the manager says everything you need to do. But for me as a manager, it's it's a bit the quote of Steve Jobs. Yeah, I try to hire people who are intellectually enough to come up with solutions, with new ideas, and think indeed. It's important that the extrovert people, they will tell it immediately. But indeed, how can we interact also with the introverts? And one thing we do is instead of throwing a subject in a meeting or just organizing a meeting and then see what pops up. Is already, if you send an invite for the meeting, give already enough context what will be discussed, so they can pre-analyze in advance and ask them come up with 2 or 3 ideas, everybody. Because otherwise, the meetings are always hijacked by the same people.
I like the fact that you remind us of the first mistake. Make sure you have the right people on your team. Yeah. And if not, and if you have tried everything from introverts to extroverts, at one point you're the manager. If you're working for them, for me, that's really an alarm that there is maybe something wrong. So I would also do performance management, and again, in an open way. Like, I noticed this, how can we cope with this? What do you need to develop? And then what if that doesn't happen?
Yeah, indeed, and it's the proactivity, and within the selection process, for me, it's crucial. Because I don't have the time to tell everybody what to do, and also because I remember we discussed earlier. How do you find all the time to have all this kind of discussion with the team? Is that the reason I don't micromanage? And typically, for me, it's also a pitfall of leading out of fear. Is to try to control everything. So we have to let them loose, give them control of their activities, and try to challenge them. Why they make this decision, or So I think that's a bit the way I try to do it.
All right, great. Here we have a question. What does Gen Z expect onboarding-wise? What's important to them? Did you notice any differences in the past coming years of what they want?
Do you want to jump on this one?
I told a bit what I tried to do, but I also one bad experience where indeed I wasn't available, and there was not enough context on the job and what it was his responsibility, his mission. He was with a trainee, and he was never been in contact with clients and so on. So he needed a lot more comfort on his mission, and this is something which is really important. I think the first day, but also the follow-ups. And if you look at situational leadership, you try to look at in what quadrants your people are, and try to adapt the kind of follow-up that you do. For example, I have people in the team which I see every 2 days or every week. I have people in the team who just call me when there is an issue. It can be that it's we don't have fixed moments where we discuss everything, because I know they're mature enough to involve me when it's really necessary or not.
I think in terms of experience, of employee experience, I know what we do at Ormit is that we start before the employee starts. So I think they get something at home. We already communicate a lot internally as well. We make sure that people meet so many colleagues, even if it's just for a chat in that week, to really build that personal connection. You've seen, we know you are here, and that's something that people really appreciate.
All right, thanks. What do they expect in terms of training?
Oh, that's a good one, because I think the classical answer is, and it's shifting, but I want to be a manager. I want to have a team within 5 years, so I need a leadership or a team leader training. So there again, I would dig deeper and don't give all the control to Gen Z, because they don't know everything yet. That's why they are juniors. So I would really look, like in the assessment you have maybe from the interview process, like we noticed this skill and this skill and this skill could improve or are going to be maybe difficult for you. This is going to be challenging for you in the job. So therefore, we suggest you do a training on this and this.
When I look back, I see that, and also for myself, the first year in my careers, I was a lot focused on hard skills. How can I learn more into finance? How can I more learn project management and so on? What I see today with the Gen Z in my team, they're a lot more focused on soft skills. And I think it's very interesting to see on negotiation skills, storytelling, these kind of topics. I see really a shift there from hard skill to soft skills. And also, when I hire somebody, I try to look, because the role of a business developer is quite diverse, a lot of different kind of tasks. And I know if I have new people coming from a university or that the person won't be able to do everything already. So I try to look for it's what you mentioned, the 3 top skills that we need. Are these there? And then we have like maybe 4 or 5 other skills which we can support. And I try to look for, this is lacking, but we can do it with this training or this follow-up, or he will be coached by this other team member, and so on. So I'll try to make a puzzle or a jigsaw of the full picture.
Okay. I would also like to add, because this is from a team leader point of view, if you're a C-level from a company, you also have to look at your strategic planning. Like, what is the human capital you need or strategy you need to be successful within a few years? And there, soft skills indeed are crucial, because then you can adapt. Hard skills, if the technology goes away, you're stuck with the people. So I would really look like, what is the future of our company and which skills are required? And how can we train all our people, despite the generation they are in, to be able to behave in that way? Because if they can behave, then you have a very resilient company for the future.
All right. I see it's 12, so it's noon. So one more question, that's the final one, and then we're going to wrap it up. It's also a big one, so interesting. How to attract and mostly engage Gen Z talents into a company's mission?
Ooh.
Yeah, I think Gen Z is looking a lot more in jobs than earlier generations. I think topics like sustainability, what are you doing for society? Are you active in supporting, how do you say it? The social projects and stuff like that. I see it's really important for them, and it can also be a way to diversify with regard to companies which don't do this kind of stuff.
Yeah, I would go classical Simon Sinek, start with a why. And I hope in your mission there is a why that enables Gen Z to feel they have an impact, because that's what they want. But I think that everybody wants to have an impact in their job. So if you're able to translate the why, and I would really recommend the Simon Sinek methodology, I think you will have them on board.
Yeah. No, indeed, they want to have impact, and if possible, on as much as different topics.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much for attending. I hope this webinar was learning for you. Please don't forget to share your learning as a manager. Walk the talk. Show you are also working on yourself as a manager. The LinkedIn post is in the chat. And I hope to see you again for the next webinar. Dean, thank you so much for being here and for sharing your stories with us.
Yep.
And good luck with the team and the future at Engie.
Thanks, Alicia.
Thank you.